Welcome back to the Pathfinders Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Schramm, founder and CEO of Latitude, author of Pathfinders, and a couple other things that we'll probably talk about as we get into the show today. So the show is really all about two things, right? We're going to talk about the career map of where people want to go and grow and where they've been. And then we're going to talk about the folks that have guided them, their personal board of advisors. Career map, personal board of advisors. This will be shared on YouTube, Spotify, Apple playlists, and LinkedIn. So please, as you're listening to our awesome guest today, comment one or two takeaways. So without further ado, the favorite quote for the great individual joining us. And of course, as you know, if you do know her, one's not enough. So there's two favorite quotes. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Personal favorite of myself as well. And the second, when you live your life according to your values, you get to live the life you deserve. Amen. I agree to that. Holly McIlwain, our guest today, is an organizational consultant with expertise in the usage of psychometric assessment. She'll tell us what that means. In data-verified research, she brings people to deeper awareness, which happens when they show up as their best selves. She created narrow spaces. Also hear more about that today. She's an awesome person. That's not on her bio, but I got added in there because it's true. And this narrow spaces is a method for helping people navigate those narrow spaces between work and life with ease and less unnecessary friction. I feel we could all use a lot more of that. She's growing the company out of her home, and she's big on making sure that she's able to prioritize balance because that's what the business is doing. So she's got to walk the walk and talk the talk. Mother of James, John, and coming soon, Jeremiah. Fun fact, you know how we like to wrap this up before we bring our guest on stage. She too grew up on a farm. Holly, welcome to the show today. What's happening?
Hi, Pete. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Of course. And we could probably keep going. And there's a whole bunch more to talk about and highlight along the way. But let's just dive right into it. What'd you want to be when you were growing up, Holly?
Okay. So I grew up on a farm, as you said. I don't know where I got this word, but I wanted to be a child psychologist.
Okay.
I don't know that I knew what it was. It just sounded a whole lot better than shucking corn.
Yeah, I heard you about that. At what age was that? Were you working with the baby cows at some point in time and you're like, I can talk some sense into these puppies?
For sure. No, it was probably around like the age of 6 or 7. When I was 5, I had this cat named Molly, who was like a really cool cat. And she started crying in front of me one day and made me like follow her to a barn where she gave birth. So I learned about birth at the age of 5 when I saw a cat to give birth. I knew that was not for me, not a place that I wanted to be working. So somehow that journey to child psychology came through. And now, I work with executives and I use a lot of psychology tools. So maybe there's something there.
Okay, got it. So what did you study in school? Was it birthing cats or psychology or something else? What was it?
Something totally different. So
okay. Usually what we hear.
Yeah, right. So I went to school to be a middle school teacher, to be a middle childhood teacher. And my two areas, we had to pick 2 concentrations, was language arts and social studies.
Okay.
But I knew I did not want to be a classroom teacher. So I figured out ways to make money while I was in college, doing some of the things associated with my training and skills. Like I worked for America Reads, teaching first graders how to read and doing other weird things in college. But when it came time to my senior year to do this long student teaching experience, I was like, oh no, that's not me. So I convinced my advisor to let me write a curriculum that I would actually teach to teachers how to teach to their students at different schools and get evaluated on that. Weird.
And how did it go?
It was amazing because it really did set me up for the rest of my career. A lot of my work now is in teaching executives and managers the behaviors that will make them successful. My curriculum was all about making choices based on logic and facts. And so at the age of 20, that was what I was focusing on. And what that ended up doing for me immediately following college is it gave me really a lot of structure in organizing content, organizing research, organizing data, and then conveying that in an effective way to adults. I also taught a lot of kids in my career, but
and people that acted like kids, even if they weren't on age, or on paper, age-wise a kid. Yeah, but hey, it happens. Go on.
I mean, but like Pete, you probably have seen this, that when you treat someone in a way that you expect more from them, they show up as more. So I was teaching middle schoolers like they were 30-year-olds. And it worked. They behaved like human beings. It was amazing. And if you can teach a middle schooler, my God, you can teach anyone.
Yeah. So what was the first job upon graduating then? What'd you do? Where'd you take your talents?
Okay. Well, I didn't really want to get a job.
I don't blame you.
I wanted to get married. And since that didn't happen, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do this thing. So I joined up with an organization that allowed me to do a different school assembly in a different city every day.
Yeah.
And I traveled in a van with 12 other young adults. But, you know, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. I wasn't just like a member. I was chosen to be one of the leaders. So I was one of the 2 business leaders of the group. We made the agendas for every trip. We charted our course. We talked to our host homes, and I had to memorize and have all the content really prepared before we hit the road, because I was the first person to speak or do a drama on these stages in order to train the rest of my team. So you're starting to see a path here where
pun intended. I see the path. Yes. You found your path, if you will.
Yeah. But, you know, unfortunately I broke my foot about a couple months into my program, and it's really hard to jump on stage and be crazy when you have crutches. So I came back to Pittsburgh, a place I swore I would never come back to.
Right.
And I had student loans. So I had to get a job. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grew up at that point, because I never thought, you know, really that much further down the road. I thought I'd finish the year and have a job offer. So I got into sales, and I worked in retail eyewear. And so I helped set up, I was one of the first people hired to help set up a retail vision care holding site, where literally we setting up the doctor's office, setting up the sales areas. And I learned how to do all the medical assisting and the sales element for optical work. It was crazy.
Wow. We've pivoted a few times on this short journey, and it seems like you have about 50 years of experience jammed into these first 20, 25 years. Holly, on the preparation for this, you said, yes, you did have a career map documented at some point. At what point in your career did you say, okay, I got a little bit of an idea. I've probably talked to a couple of other folks. I got to put pencil to paper, or maybe it was like clicking and you did it on the computer. At what point was that, and what did you put into draft 1 of this career map?
Okay, so I can think about 3 drafts.
Okay.
One is when I was 20 years old, when I had to pick a path, whether or not I was going to do my student teaching and actually become a teacher. So my first career path was a whole bunch of no's. I knew where I didn't want to go. And that helped me at least to be clear about not getting stuck in a career that guided me, but giving me agency to guide my career. The one thing I knew in life was that work was not a punishment and it was not a chore. So I needed to make sure that whatever I chose to do for work to meet the demands of reality was something that aligned with things that I at least could be excited about for the moment, whether it was the people that I was around, the purpose of the work, or just the fact that I was getting paid. And so my second career map came probably, I would say, after I got about 7 months of working in the sales position.
Okay.
I had been volunteering in a nonprofit organization, and I loved the nonprofit work. And I was pretty much just working this sales job to pay my bills, but my heart was in the nonprofit space. So I had some conversations with people that had mentored me in my high school years, who knew me and who knew what I was kind of made for, and had an opportunity to level up into a role in this nonprofit organization. So at that point, I had to reconfigure my path. If I was going to work in this nonprofit organization, then there were certain skills that I would need to possess.
Yeah.
And there were certain things that I was going to need to do in order to have a career and see where I wanted to go. So that was the second time. Now nonprofit didn't pay really well. So I consistently had other work to substantiate my way of living. And I learned a lot through all of these different jobs, including, starting my own business and becoming a licensed massage therapist and having a brick and mortar storefront, like all of these crazy things while I'm working in the nonprofit industry, making sure my credentials are up to date, really learning the organization, leveraging these things. And when I was about 28 years old, I was on a path in this organization of growth. And I was given an opportunity to move up into the central organization, the central administration portion. That was a career path that when I sat down and wrote down what I needed to do, what I wanted to do, and where my talents were meeting demands of reality, I was terrified because it meant that I was no longer just playing the cards that were dealt to me, but it meant that I was actually going to begin betting on myself in a new way because there is risk involved in these stretch assignments.
So one of the things that you mentioned there was some of the mentors that helped you put together Career Map 1, 2, 3. Question here is where'd you find these people? And did they change over time as you went from job to job, organization to organization? We talk about the idea of a personal board of advisors. It seems that, as you were navigating this professional journey, you sort of built your own board. But one of the things, people ask us all the time, they're like, where do I find these folks? So one, where'd you find them? And two, what'd you discuss?
Yeah, well, one of the things that was so helpful is that you don't have to look far to find the people who are going to be the best board of advisors for you.
Yeah.
Intimacy is really key. So one of my board of advisors members was actually the head of a leadership program that I had attended when I was in high school. That was a really valuable piece for me because she had seen me grow. And she was also doing something that I really wanted to do. A second member of that board of advisors for me was one of my college professors who she's retired now, but I still have contact with her. She challenged me in a way because she didn't look like everyone else at the college. Two, she didn't dress like everyone else. She seemed a lot more like me. I could see more of myself in her. And she obtained a PhD at a time when women were not encouraged to do that. And so I knew that she had tenacity. So she was another person that I absorbed into my board of advisors. And then I would say a third person was someone that had a lot of business sense, totally different industry than what I was in, totally different industry than what I was raised around. But the level of business acumen that he possessed was something that I wanted to understand. And so I've had a relationship with him, a mentor, and it became a friendship after a while, where it became more than me asking him questions and receiving, but this mutuality. And my board of advisors has certainly grown over the past 25 years and changed. But I think that it really comes into this piece that I needed to know what I wanted to learn, and I needed to be brave enough to be open to feedback.
So whenever it comes to the feedback, this gets into a little bit of the coaching work, right? So as a coach, and that's one of the board seats, right, is the coach that you could have on the PBA. You're asking a lot of questions, helping guide people. And let's go to this piece of feedback, right? So give us some things to think about whenever it comes from how do we ask for feedback? How do we deliver the feedback? How do we ensure and bring some accountability to following through on the feedback? So some of the tips, I'd say, and then some of the, hey, what to avoid? Because you've probably, just going to go out on a limb here, and been part of some of those feedback cycles that were less than optimal. So how to go about it, good stuff, and what not to do, the bad stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll share my secret weapon.
Okay, please do. No. Everybody listen in. Edge of your chair right now, please and thank you. Okay, so,
let's go. So over 20 years ago, I had my first psychometric assessment. I took a Clifton Strengths Finder assessment when I was in college. I'm not going to tell you how many years over 20, but more than 20. And when I took this assessment, it was like the light bulb went off. Oh, look, I took a test and this is the information that was provided and it feels really good. That was great. I was so happy. I felt so good about myself. And then about 8 years later, I took a DISC assessment. And in this DISC assessment, there was something called a hindering factor that was listed. And I got so mad when I read those hindering factors that I put that in a drawer for about 6 months because I was not prepared and mature enough and desiring change enough. I wasn't uncomfortable enough to want to know how I was going to get in my own way. And up until that point, I don't think I slowed down enough to acknowledge that I have some responsibility towards my own future.
Yeah.
So often, and again, are in your early 20s, there's something happening in your brain where it's not fully developed yet. And so it's easy to feel like I'm surrounded by idiots and it's everyone but me. Well, this piece of data actually challenged this assertion that everyone's an idiot and I'm fine. And again, this was in my early 20s. I was not mentally prepared to be confronted with that reality.
Right.
So I sat down with a coach and he explained how all this good feeling information, the Clifton Strengths, how that was making me feel and all the good things about me. But then also pointed out that an overuse of some of these strengths got in my own way. So that it gave me the courage to open up these hindering factors. Now, the reason I'm saying this is a secret weapon is because so often when it comes to receiving feedback, we want the good stuff, but not the tough stuff. And so by having these psychometric tools, and not all assessments are equal, but by having the right psychometric tools in front of me, I was able to objectively receive information that was tender and have the right people around me to help me rise to a higher level, leveraging my strengths, not overusing them, but also not discounting those probabilities that because of the way that I'm made, there may be areas that I'm just not going to be all that great naturally.
Yeah. Opportunities. And this is where we just like you did earlier on in your career, identifying some of those skill gaps in the nonprofit world. You got to think about, okay, how do I want to continue to grow, develop? I think, DISC, Strengths Finders are some very helpful, assessments to look at. What are some other ones to think about? If, a leader says, hey, Holly, I want to do some of these assessments for my organization. You'd probably first say, well, it's not one size fits all. We got to figure out the right tool for the job. But generally speaking, and maybe we break it up into some things that are helpful for earlier career and some assessments that are helpful later in career.
Yeah, well, as a psychometrician, I am very snotty about assessments. So I'll say this, that not all assessments are equal. And depending on what your usage, there can be good assessments to use. But it's also important to understand the data analytics behind them and the methodology that the assessments are being weighted with. And so certain things are contemporary language usage, timing, the contemporary usage of technology, the continuous investment in refining the data analytics because computers get smarter and smarter.
Yeah.
But as a result, sometimes humans get less smart and less smart. And so having
lazy
and having really good, strong data analytics is there. And so one of the things that I actually do with organizations and individuals is I needs assessment first, an intake where I find out, what are you looking for?
Yep.
What are the metrics you're hoping to improve? And how do you plan to use this tool long-term? Because if you're just looking for a dopamine hit because you took an assessment and you read it, then do anything. Try to get a free one. Don't waste your money. But if you're looking for a true organizational change or a true internal human change, then you want to be sure that you're using the very best data analytics that are out there. And my research has narrowed it down to just two particular brands, one very popular, one very, very much not popular. But the data analytics really make all the difference in the world for me.
Yeah. And what are the two that you suggest?
Yeah. So for Clifton Strengths, Gallup is in the world the best research body, and they invest the most in their data analytics and tools. And anyone can say they like strengths, but you really want to make sure you're working with a verified, certified strengths coach, which you can search for online.
Yeah.
The second is
you are one, by the way.
I am one. Yeah.
And it was actually through Holly that I got involved with some other folks local in the Pittsburgh area and went through the training for myself. And so she's looked at some of my 34, some of the top 5, top 10, and some of the other areas to think about that maybe don't get me as jazzed up. So been there, done that, talked 4 years ago. Isn't that wild to think about how maybe it's like 3.5, but it is cool to see those things. And psychometrician, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one.
So that's one. The second is a very much more obscure assessment, and it's the TTI brand. So you'd really have to look this up. So it will be the TTI disc assessment or the TTI driving forces assessment, because that uses a different kind of science. But those two assessments from the TTI brand only actually have the most reputable psychometric assessment data. So on the back end, so they're not sexy. They're not really glamorous reports. The website's not all that hot. The platform itself for users like me is phenomenal because I can do so much in helping a manager understand their team with what actually motivates their team. But the reports are so easy to read that they are designed in a way that anyone can read them, anyone can understand them. And that it's not overly graphic. It's not overly narrative. It's just a really balanced assessment. But even more than that, it's the analytics behind it and the training to become a psychometrician like myself through this company, through their platforms. It is quite rigorous. And for those reasons, I'm qualified with Wiley. I'm qualified with Everything Disc. I've used PI. Give me the list, and I have gone through the training because of some of my client needs. But I won't recommend anything but these two brands based on the needs of my client. I'll help them understand which would be best, because integrity of product is so much more important than sexy marketing.
Yep. And I think that's something that we get caught up on. And we've even seen this throughout the Latitude journey, right? There's plenty of other things out there that, have fantastic marketing behind. And then whenever you start to dig in, and our chief scientist will dig in, he's like, well, where's the oomph? Smells like snake oil, looks like snake oil. Get under the covers. It is, in fact, snake oil. And so I think it's a great reminder for any of those leaders out there and folks that just listening. Hey, if you're going to take an assessment, or if something is given to you, just ask a little bit more, and maybe reach out to Holly and say, hey, you ever heard of this one before? It wasn't one of the ones that you mentioned on the Pathfinders podcast. So I think that's helpful and a good reminder. Not all created equal. Same thing goes with the different mentors and guides and coaches we have along the way. Holly, before I get into my last question and the recap, can you talk a little bit more about narrow spaces and BWP? I know those are maybe BWP first, and how you went about creating something like that.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
You just snapped your fingers and it was done, right? Super simple.
Not at all.
No. Okay.
Yeah, not at all. So I think I'll start with BWP because they are related, but BWP has serves to fill a tremendous void in our culture. Back in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, myself personally, I was responsible for an HR leadership role at a university. And as the world was shutting down, our deepest concern was for our students to be served well and for my employees to be cared for and able to keep gainful employment. Many of my employees only came to work, and that was their only social interactions. So having suddenly put all of our employees at home, all of our students at home, there were some very significant concerns for mental health and wellness. Yeah. Personally, within my home, I had 2 little boys that suddenly were yanked out of daycare in my house. I had a father-in-law who was dying of stage 4 cancer, who we had just moved in, and we had discovered we were newly pregnant with another baby. And so my husband was reporting to the county offices. He ran 2 departments, and I was working 10 hours a day trying to figure out how to care for my employees with all of this happening in our home. Over the next several months, we experienced loss after loss after loss after loss. My father died. Our baby died. My father-in-law died. My husband was diagnosed with MS. All of this is happening in such a short period of time. And as a woman in leadership, I was torn constantly between the needs of the people I served professionally and the needs of the people I served personally. And that whole piece of how was I healing and dealing with all of that grief?
Yeah.
So I looked around and I saw other professional women were showing up for me in radical ways, helping me to be brave enough to get out of bed, helping me to be brave enough to call off one day, really giving me that kind of support. One of them was my boss, the Chief Human Resources Officer at the university, who has been and will be just a tremendous mentor for me. Another was a person in the finance industry who was running a massive division. Another was Tina Winter. She's the founder of the Winter Partners, a company that a retained executive search firm that I'm a partner in. And I looked at these women and others, the list goes on. They showed up for me in a way that was exactly the support I needed.
Mm-hmm.
So as the year began to close, I hosted this Brave Women brunch with one of my old intern. Actually, I asked her to help me do some of this work. And we saw the intimacy of these 12 strangers who I knew each of them, but they didn't know each other. But
Right.
The intimacy on the screen and the way they shared with each other and how they responded, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. High-level professional women being vulnerable and non-competitive. Whoa. So we knew there was something there. So I assembled a board. That's what we do, right? I assembled a board of people who were smarter than I was in different areas. We worked together. We built our charter. We built all of the necessary elements to actually become a nonprofit, because I thought this thing's only going to be on a computer screen once a month. We don't need anything. Boy, was I wrong. Over the next several years, what we saw in the United States amongst women who were working is that in 2020, the pandemic caused 24% of working women to leave the workforce in order to maintain and sustain the needs of their families and caregiving responsibilities. 21, 22, and 23, great years for women. They were back in the workforce, taking leadership roles. They were doing it all. They were experiencing and enjoying flexibility of hybrid scheduling. They were home for their family. They were able to take care of themselves physically and mentally, and they were getting the job done.
Yeah.
24 rolls around, and there begins to be a huge shift in the United States. The return to work culture and the retraction of some of those flexibilities impacted professional women at a significantly higher level than it was affecting professional men.
Yeah.
Women take on most of the caregiving responsibilities, even if they have high level roles. The mental load that women carry because of the way that our brains are made is significantly different than men in leadership. So that flexibility that women enjoyed in 21, 22, and 23 made it possible for them to thrive. 24, we hit a survival level. And many women, like me in high-level leadership positions, looked at the scenario, discovered if we can't change it, we're walking away.
Yeah.
Or things became untenable because there is reduced access to childcare in the United States right now. There is a significantly reduced tolerance for the need for maternity leave. I mean, it's amazing to look at some of these very progressive companies and their very, very anti-female leadership behaviors. And so I left, created my own business.
Yeah.
The Narrow Spaces. Other women left, but still some other women got squeezed out, and other women are dying on the vine out there, suffering. So what Brave Women Project does is we provide professional development and confidential, psychologically safe support sessions for professional women every single month.
Can they participate all across the United States?
Yeah, so we're in 18 different states and another country at this point. And because I know it's amazing. Again, I never thought this would happen.
Little baby's growing up.
I know, it's amazing. We went on and hired an executive director in January because we recognized that the growth of the organization was surpassing the ability that I had to fulfill all of my responsibilities. And so at this point, we honor women annually at our Pillar Awards. Our first event had 130 women. Our second had 320. And this year, in November, we're on track for 500 to 700 attendees. The work of Brave Women Project has exploded. We've brought on corporate memberships because what we have seen is that when an organization commits to the professional development and psychological safety of women, everyone wins. And the reason for this is that women who lead have a different style than men who lead because of the way that our brains work. They are different and they're incredibly complementary. So having female leaders on an executive team informing and driving policy and decision, it's a good thing for everyone in the company.
Yeah.
And now just this morning, I posted an article from Forbes outlining the long-term effects of this mistake that we are in the United States right now with this ridiculous return to work, no clear metrics policy. As women are leaving, the numbers are between 40 and 47% right now. As women in leadership are leaving the workforce at senior levels, the impact will have a significant economic detriment in the United States, not only for those new workers who at 22, 23, 24, 25 are entering a workforce that is a lot more hostile than it should be. But for the next 20 years, we are going to be seeing the fallout. And there's a lot more in the Forbes article, and the U.S. Chamber is doing lots of research on this as well. There will be a negative economic impact on income tax generated. There will be significant issues that are continuing to come forth. So I work in advocacy on that to help organizations understand that the loss of knowledge and innovation is coming if we can't get this right. And then
it's not too late. We still have a chance.
It's
All is not lost. Okay.
It's not too late. So that's where Narrow Spaces comes in.
Yeah.
So I use my company of Narrow Spaces to help organizational leaders leverage predictable patterns of behavior, metrics that make sense, and organizational strategy to create a space where every employee gets to do the best work of their life. So I help the leaders do the good things that they say they're going to do. I help managers be good managers by really learning some of those skills around feedback, around career mapping, around, again, these predictable patterns of behavior. And I help employees create systems for themselves where they are healthy, where they can generate real wealth that makes sense for the kind of life they wish to have. And for all of them, we leverage values and behaviors that are associated with those values as a system and a safeguard to construct the boundaries that allow you to have the biggest narrow space you can possibly have. So that when you are navigating that space between work and life, it's energizing and evolving, and it makes sense. And all those unnecessary friction points that cause a reduction in the ability to problem solve, well, a lot of those can be worked out by these predictable patterns of behavior. And so I use psychometric assessment to help start the conversation safely.
So Holly, as we wrap up, last question here is around some of those things that you're doing for the people, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of this is going back to good organizations doing good things for good people and equipping them. One of the things that you alluded to, and we do a lot around and the book talks about, is a career map and a personal board of advisors. It's been helpful to you throughout your journey. Talk to us about the value to the organization, the benefit to this company or org. Whenever each of those people, each of our employees have a career map and they have a couple of different mentors guiding them on that personal board, how's that help the organization?
Retention. 2 reasons why retention is essential. 1, information and knowledge transfer. The speed to solution when you are moving someone up versus backfilling someone because they left because you didn't give them an opportunity. My goodness, that speed to solution is huge.
Yeah.
I mentioned that Winter Partners is the firm that I'm a partner in. We do retained executive search. Let me tell you, that stuff is expensive. It costs so much less to invest in an employee than to conduct a search for an employee. And listen, I've worked in companies that post and pray. I've talked with contingent search agents. I've talked with headhunters. And I say it's like having a plumber. Okay. If you've got a lot of bathrooms in your house, you can have a plumber that you call and he gets you in when he can get you in.
Yeah.
Okay. We wait for the plumber to show up at the door. If you have a lot of bathrooms, that's fine. But if you run a business and you have a bathroom that you need your employees or your customers to come into, do you want to have a headhunter plumber who just has a toilet laying around come bring it to you? I don't know. Do you want to have a contingent plumber who's going to do a little bit of work on your toilet, go away for a while, and then come back? I don't know. I'd rather have a retained plumber who comes and does the job, gives you a clear understanding of what's needed, checks your pipes, looks for obstacles, because you know that investment in a new toilet, and I know that's a really, really rough look at this, but you want to make sure that you get this essential role right and all of the things. And so that's the difference between the work that you're paying for when you have to backfill.
Yeah.
You have to change because someone left. Why not invest? Why not invest in your people now? Get them on a path, connect them with the right leaders, seek out mentors and matchmake for them even. Get that board of directors for your people. Everyone at every level in an organization should be plugged into a path that makes sense for them, people to guide them, and a plan for how this information and knowledge transfer is going to help the organization as well. Then you get engaged employees who think of new ways to solve problems, who think of better ways to fix toilets. I mean, I just wouldn't want to go very long without a toilet at my place of work.
I love it. Holly, thank you so much for joining us today. Quick recap here for everybody listening. From farmer to teacher to part-time snotty psychometrician, but really, she's a psychometrics magician. Holly does a lot of work around coaching and team training. From the farm to potentially a child psychologist. And then at the age of 5, the cat giving birth said no to the farm, but you still love psychology. So it really made sense that you went to go to college as a middle school teacher. And now you're teaching managers and leaders and executives how to be better, grow, navigate those narrow spaces. Treat people in a way you expect more out of them, and they're going to go a little bit harder, faster, stronger. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. She led her 12-person van at school assemblies all around the area. The broken foot brought Holly back to the Berg, and she got into sales for a retail eyewear group. 20 years old, she built out Career Map 1. Knowing what not to do was the big highlight there. Whatever you choose for work should excite you. People, purpose, payment. Career Map 2, with help of those high school mentors. She went back into the archives for these ones, identified skills that she needed for this nonprofit growth, and she massaged the map to what actually fit best. Age 28, she got into Career Map 3, and this was whenever you're getting into those leadership roles and reality hit, and you started betting on yourself. Your PBA was focused on growth, and you found these individuals in all kinds of places. One was in a role where you worked. A second was a person who challenged you and showed that breaking the barrier was okay and possible as well. A third was from a different line of work and an alternate business world. Relationships became mutually beneficial and they changed a lot over those 2.5 decades. You love the Strength Finders, and DISC was a little hard whenever it first hit you. You said, see you later for a little bit, got a coach, and really came to the realization that overuse of strengths could get in your way. Feedback means good stuff and the tough stuff. Objectively receive and digest that tender information. You told us that BWP was created in 2020 to help with mental health, how to heal and deal with grief personally and professionally. Sign up for their big event coming in November. Narrow Spaces is helping organizational leaders do good things and be good leaders. So cheers to building the best and biggest narrow spaces for each of us. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Pete.